to be back in New York City, and we've got to start with this. A dramatic 180, or is it? After days of claims that only Congress can stop families from being separated at the border, the president reverses course.
You can't do it through an executive order. By the way, today I signed an executive order. We're going to keep families together, but the border is going to be just as tough as it's been.
But the order leaves the country with more questions than answers.
I don't think the deception has stopped. I think the executive order is a sham. I think it was a press release to vent some of the anger.
The president's supporters show their unwavering loyalty at a rally last night in Minnesota.
I think he saw the right thing to do, and he made it happen. And I think that's exactly why he's elected the president, because he makes the right decisions.
Despite all of this, the lives of thousands of children remain in limbo. Some of them might not ever see their parents again.
What they're doing to families, just as a mother and a human being, it's just not right.
It's not. We begin with President Trump's about face, or is it one? He signed an executive order calling for an end to the separation of child migrants from their parents at the border after insisting over and over it was up to Congress to end the policy. Here's the issue. It does not solve the problem for the more than 2,000 children who have already been separated from their families. I have an amazing team here to break all of the latest developments down in this incredibly important story. But first, I want to get you caught up, because there is a lot of questions about the president's executive order this morning. And was it just, well, was it? We're going to find out, starting with what exactly did it mandate. For one, it continues the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy to criminally prosecute people who cross the border illegally. Second, it states that it is now the policy of the Trump administration to keep parents and their kids together as adults wait their court hearing. Third, it calls on other government agencies, including the Pentagon, to make available existing facilities or construct new ones to house these families. So when is all of this going to happen? There's no clear answer. During a White House briefing on Wednesday, a counselor to Attorney General Jeff Sessions said an implementation phase would happen, but had no additional details. And what about the 2,300 kids who have already been separated from their parents currently at shelters in 17 states? Well, there's no current plan to reunify them, and a spokesperson for the Health and Human Services Department says the agency is waiting for further guidance on the matter. So, was an executive order even necessary in the first place? The answer is no. The New York Times puts it this way, quote, Mr. Trump likes the flourish of signing executive orders in front of cameras, but most of his executive orders have amounted to asking the administration to conduct reviews and come up with proposed solutions to problems, or they've consisted of directives that he could have made with a phone call. This is one of those orders. The government is now trying to answer this question: where are the girls? NBC White House reporter Kristen Welker asked that question to Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, who said she'd get back to her. Now, HHS has released images and video that they say was taken at a shelter in Homestead, Florida, showing both boys and girls. Prior to today, we had only seen images of boys. The government also released video that it says was taken at a shelter in Virginia. There is no official word yet on whether reporters might be able to tour those facilities. And then there's this, Time Magazine's new cover. Welcome to America. Let's go live to the White House, where NBC's Peter Alexander is standing by. Peter, I want to point out two things. You know, I have been in Texas for the last few days. On my flight out of McAllen, there were a number of chaperones with unaccompanied minors. On my next flight to New York, again, I saw a chaperone with a small group of unaccompanied minors. So it is continuing. It's quite stunning if you think about it. The president signs this executive order, and we have no idea what it means. All of those children in detention centers still woke up today not knowing where their mothers and fathers are. I know President Trump, he spoke at a rally last night in Minnesota. Walk me through exactly what he said.
Yeah, so the president, as you note, Stephanie, out overnight defending that decision to halt this family separation policy, his policy, a policy that only a few days ago, you know, his Homeland Security Secretary claimed didn't exist, one that he insisted an executive order couldn't fix. The president, within the last hours, picking up where he left off last night on Twitter again, trying to shift the blame to Democrats, condemning the immigration system. He writes, "We shouldn't be hiring judges by the thousands as our ridiculous immigration laws demand. We should be changing our laws, building the wall, hire border agents and ICE, and not let people come into our country based on the legal phrase that they're told to say as their password." That comment we should note about a password. The president appearing to complain about how some undocumented immigrants he claims are trained to say certain words to seek asylum. But a quick fact check on that judges item there for the president. The Washington Post just last month reporting it's unlikely that thousands of immigration judges will be hearing these cases. According to the National Association of Immigration Judges, it's more likely they'll be adding at least 100 additional judges. Retirements could affect that number. As for last night, the president appeared heavily focused, despite backtracking on this issue, of looking strong and again casting blame elsewhere. Take a listen.
Today, I signed an executive order. We're going to keep families together, but the border is going to be just as tough as it's been. The Democrats want open borders. Let everybody come in. Let everybody pour in. We don't care. Let them come in from the Middle East. Let them come in from all over the place.
That was President Trump again last night in Minnesota. His executive order aides reiterate not ending the administration's zero-tolerance policy. They'll prosecute all adults who cross the border illegally. He's keeping up that tough tone on illegal immigration, telling the crowd we are sending them the hell back, Stephanie. We're going to hear a lot more from the president in formats like this next week. He heads to South Carolina and to North Dakota. Back to you.
I got to ask you before we go, though, American Airlines and United, they're taking a stand. And it's amazing because I think back to after the Paris Climate Accord, all the CEOs who said, no, this isn't the right thing to do. We're starting to see corporate leaders decide, you know, we've got to step up in terms of morality. So tell me about these airlines.
Well, sometimes it's those corporate leaders, that business community the president is most reactive to. We know he's image-oriented. When he sees pictures he doesn't like, he's quick to react. But also when he hears from other CEOs, his sort of contemporaries, as it were, both United, American, and some other airlines, including Southwest and Frontier, basically sending the message loud and clear to this administration, to this president, that they don't want any role. They don't want to be transporting any of these young children from where they cross the border to other parts of the country. A spokesperson for the Homeland Security Department calling that unfortunate. Stephanie?
I also wonder, President Trump saying some of these children are trained to say specific words to try to help them get asylum. I wonder what those babies are saying, those toddlers. I'm pretty sure you can't train them to say any of those words. I want to go live to NBC's Cal Perry. He is in Tornillo, Texas, and this is where the so-called tent city has been put up to hold a massive amount of these migrant children that are separated from their parents. Cal, yesterday when we spoke, you were able to see a whole lot of border agents. You saw some vans, but you still hadn't seen any children. Talk us through what the situation at the tent cities are like, but even broader than that, the community, because that portion of Texas is a very humble area that could, without a doubt, use financial support, without a doubt could use aid. And many people in that area are saying, why are we spending all this money on these tent cities? We need it. We don't even have clean water.
Yeah, the ranchers around this area especially will give you that message. Even those who are in favor of these kind of harsh immigration policies will tell you it's the economy that they're worried about. Now, the tent city behind me, we do know that there are a few hundred kids in this city. That's based on information that we got Friday. I saw 2 buses full of kids arrive yesterday. Overnight, Stephanie, about 5 hours ago, in the middle of the night, about 3 in the morning, we saw 3 vans being escorted by a white Suburban out of the camp. And one of the issues here is when the U.S. government tries to keep us out of these facilities, when they provide us with old photos, everything they do looks a bit nefarious because, of course, they're lying a lot of the time. So we don't know if they were taking people out of this camp in the middle of the night, but we do know there's been a lot of movement. We've also seen a lot of supply trucks in and out of this camp, so certainly things are happening, but it's unclear sort of exactly what that is. One more note on the community, because I think it's an excellent point that you raise. We saw educators educators come here yesterday, superintendents of the neighboring school districts, and their message was the damage has been done. When the President of the United States uses that kind of rhetoric, sometimes racist rhetoric, what happens is people stop showing up for school. The absentee numbers have gone up this year, especially in this area, and that's something that educators and parents, of course, are really worried about, Stephanie.
Wow. Tell me about the group of mayors who are set to make their way down there in a few hours.
So we're going to have over a dozen mayors. This is the National Conference of Mayors. We're going to see Bill de Blasio from New York. We'll have the mayor of Los Angeles, and we'll also have the mayor of Miami. The amazing thing about this is they're going to come right here, which is as close as they can get to this camp as well. I spoke to the press person who's organizing this trip, Stephanie, and get this. I asked, is there any chance that we can go on a tour with the mayors? And she said to me, they've been told they have to wait 2 weeks.
That's what I don't understand. They've been told they have to wait 2 weeks. This is my quick plea. First Lady Melania Trump, First Daughter Ivanka Trump, you have access to go down to those tent cities. I just left Texas, and the saddest thing for me was leaving there, never having seen one single child. I didn't get to tour a detention center. You say that you care about this. This is your central focus. Ivanka, you have said you are a fierce advocate for the advancement of women and girls. You have to actually do it. This is your opportunity. You sent a tweet yesterday, pardon me, a nonsense tweet congratulating your father for his swift action. And now you said it's Congress's turn. You know what? Congress does need to do something. But signing an executive order is simply not enough. We don't know what is going to happen to those children. I ask you, please go down there. Go to Texas. Bring us with you. Bring journalists that care, that are actually doing something and following this. We care about these kids. If you say that you do, then please take action. You're not just the first daughter. You are a senior advisor to the president. This ain't a photo op. I want to bring my panel in. Midwin Charles, she's an attorney with the law firm Midwin Charles Associates. Ben White is a CNBC contributor and chief economic correspondent for Politico, and former congressman and one of my favorite tweeters, David Jolly, who's a Republican from the state of Florida. Okay, David. First, I want to share what the president said when he signed the executive order.
We don't like to see families separated. At the same time, we don't want people coming into our country illegally. This takes care of the problem. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much. He signs it. He gives the pen to Kirstjen Nielsen. Kirstjen Nielsen, who, pardon me, has been lying all week about saying, I don't even know what the policy is.
Your passion is important because this is one of journalism's finest moments, but it's also a moment of national conversation for the American people. The anger so many people feel is based on some very foundational concepts. The president and his team has lied to us for the last week. We know that. He has lied every single day about his creation of this policy, about his reversal of this policy, and he's lying on a matter that implicates the welfare of children, another very foundational instinct that we have.
It's not who we are.
It is not who we are, but it is who this president is, and that's why we are so angry about this. This is going to get worse, because journalists are going to ensure that we continue to follow this story. The next step is implementation, which they don't have a plan. This was a knee-jerk reaction based on the president's own decision-making yesterday. Where are the resources? One, is the policy going to change? And if it does, where are the resources to change it? Because right now, Congress is not going to be providing those resources.
Are you surprised that he, at the very least, that he is changing course? Whether or not he actually has put the resources going forward, I was happy when I heard about the executive order. I'm happy that it's not going to happen, hopefully, to more families. But does it surprise you? Because thus far, all we've ever seen him do is double down, double down, double down.
Yeah, well, we've finally seen a situation which it was simply untenable for him to continue the policy that he'd implemented.
But why? Why is this one untenable?
Well,
I would have thought Charlottesville untenable.
Okay, Charlottesville perhaps siding with white supremacists, somewhat untenable. But in this case, we're talking about innocent children placed in cages. We're talking about separation of families, screaming babies left alone in orphanages. These are images the American people will not accept, and he realized that and backed off. But overarching all of this is a complete misconception about what's happening at the southern border. There is no border crisis.
You need to say this again.
I will say it.
Because there is a border issue. There is not a border crisis. No, this is manufactured.
Just look at the numbers, okay? In 2000, you had about 1.2 million illegal crossings. The last couple of years, 400,000. The numbers are way down. Most of these people are legitimate asylum seekers who are coming from very damaging situations, trying to give their kids a better life, a chance at success in the United States. These are not violent criminals pouring through our borders. All of what President Trump says about this is wrong. This is not a crisis. This is not an infiltration of the United States by evil, illegal immigrants. These are, for the most part, law-abiding citizens who will pay taxes here, who will help support this country, who will add jobs and help employers. It's a complete miscomprehension, fabrication of the situation.
There are 6 million open jobs in the United States. In the town of McAllen, Texas, there are open jobs. There are shrimp boats that need workers, and the immigrants can't come through. I spoke to the mayor of McAllen, Texas, who said, we support really strong borders. We need foreign policy with Central America so things could be better there. When you saw the economy improve in Mexico, people were moving out of the United States and going home. Midwin, he signs the executive order. We know it doesn't solve everything, but from a logistics standpoint, what actually happens here?
You know, I'm glad you asked that, and I think we have to sort of step back with the fact that he signed an executive order for an issue that he claimed they never even had. Remember, Christian said initially that there was no policy separating children from their parents at the border, period. That was her tweet. So I don't understand how the president can sign an executive order to end the policy that they said they never had. And also, how can he sign an executive order to end a policy that he said only Congress could fix, and it was a problem that was started by the Democrats. But where we go forward here, for me, is disconcerting, because what the executive order does not cover is what happens to parents and children when they are confined together. Will they be detained indefinitely? If so, that would be in contravention of trying to detain families in order to deter asylum seekers. There is a court order that says that you can no longer do that. So, and also, what is the plan in place to reunite these children with their parents?
On my flights yesterday home, there were groups of unaccompanied minors. I'm going, how are they going to find their mothers again?
But this is a mark of what we have been talking about for months here on this show, is that you have an administration that is inexperienced and inept. And this is one of the fallouts of being inexperienced and inept, is that you do not even have a plan in place to keep track of children and their parents. And it shouldn't be lost on anyone that this same ineptness and inexperience is being played out in Puerto Rico in terms of the fact that they still don't have power. Like, all of this is connected. And as Americans, we must start to demand from our elected officials and from this administration that they be competent in the job in which they are supposed to do.
David, you are the Republican in the House. I want to share what some attendees at President Trump's rally had to say last night.
When a person goes, robs a bank, he's separated from his family anyway, same as the people coming in this country. I'm an immigrant myself. I came here in 2000, and when we immigrated, we came here legally.
Our family means a lot to us, so we have to do it.
I see you getting emotional. Why is that?
Because he did. He tries so hard, and so many people are so down on him.
My God, won't someone please care for the children? Well, there's children. If I get arrested, my kids aren't going to see me for a while either.
What in the world are they talking about? When these people are crossing, first of all, they're not trying to cross illegally. It's a bottleneck at the ports of entry, and they can't get in. And when they do cross the Rio Grande, they turn themselves in. They look for a border agent. This is misinformation, and it's obscene that we're doing this to our own American people.
It's an incredible misinformation, and it's important that you highlight the misinformation. You have scenarios where you have truly unaccompanied minors. They don't arrive with families. We saw a spike in that about 2 years ago. That did create a crisis. What do you do with unaccompanied minors? In this case, it is the Trump administration that takes a family unit, splits up that family unit, and takes the children away from the parents. That is what is happening. The voices we hear at Trump rallies reflect what Donald Trump himself has defined as the tone and tenor of the country. And what I mean by that is this, and I'll say this as a Republican, because on immigration laws we like to say we're a nation of laws. But we are also a
let's follow the laws.
But we're also a loving and caring nation, and those two are not mutually exclusive. We can be a nation of laws while also being a loving and caring nation. We can say, if you come here without an asylum claim, without a humanitarian claim, if you come here without proper documentation and we are going to process you and have a hearing, you can stay with your family while we do that. That is what has changed. The President of the United States today speaks only to the law
and
not to the loving and caring part of our nation.
And I think it's important to point out out that the Republican Party for a long time has espoused themselves as pro-family, family values,
right.
pro-life, and also fiscal conservatives. So if you stand for those three things, how can you stand for this policy?
I spoke to a Baptist minister who his number one priority and the reason he cares about politics is our pro-life initiatives. So what I'm confused by is why those initiatives end when you're looking at 5-year-olds being torn from their mothers.
Well, when you're looking at brown 5-year-olds, I think it's important to point that out.
I want you to put your economic hat on for a moment. Sure. I understand that a large portion of Trump's base feels like they've lost job opportunities, they don't have good schools, they have slow internet access where they live in rural America. If you took the tens of millions of dollars that are going to these private prison companies to erect these tent cities for a manufactured crisis, imagine the positive impact to those communities. We need to address income inequality. Sure. Why doesn't Trump's base see that? Do these coal workers think they're going to get their jobs back if an Ecuadorian, if a child from El Salvador gets separated from his mother?
I think they do think that.
How?
Well, because Trump has told them that and made that their sort of mantra that the problem in this country...
It costs a whole lot of money to fly those kids to New York yesterday.
He has made the emotional connection for these people between the idea of violent illegal immigrants flooding over the borders and the loss of their jobs and their worst circumstances. Those two things are not actually connected. They're connected in Trump supporters' minds, but they're not reality. You talked about infrastructure spending. Trump has said he wants to make this a priority. He hasn't done it, but spending on rural broadband, spending on job training programs, spending on all of these things is a much better allocation of federal resources than building a bunch of tent cities in Texas that we shouldn't need, that we don't need. There are other ways to house these families as these things are processed. But it is an emotional connection that the president has made for his supporters between bad, brown, illegal immigrants and their own circumstances when they're not connected.
Trump's base is his hardcore base that are going to love him no matter what, but they're not enough people to get him reelected.
No, they're not.
Take me to the middle. The people who said, listen, he's pragmatic. You know, I want my taxes lowered. I want deregulation. What are those people saying tonight?
They're accepting this deal with the devil. They are transactional Republicans who wanted a traditional Republican agenda. Listen, if you are the investor class, and I don't just mean the super rich, but if you're a retiree with a 401k, if you are a double-income household making a fair amount of money, the last 2 years have been pretty good for you.
For sure.
And so you're happy. And frankly, a lot of what the president's doing is traditional Republican orthodoxy, and they are willing to accept the misogyny, the flirtations with racism, the breaking up of families, the tone and tenor that is infecting our entire body politic. They're accepting that because, as one Republican said to me, well, he's actually getting a lot of good stuff done.
But that's why the misinformation that the president puts out is a gift to them. It gives them air cover. They accept President Trump's lies because it works for their narrative. I want to keep talking about the political angle and take you to Washington because the House is expected to vote on 2 GOP immigration bills today, but both are likely to fail after inter-party tensions boiled over on the House floor yesterday in a very heated public argument. Freedom Caucus Chairman